Hello everyone. My name is Gönül, or you can call me Damla as well. So this is the presentation, and this is the topic that I chose for a class called Soch 496, as well as specialization seminar on migration. So the topic that I choose is named as Asylum Legislation and Policies in Turkey. The reason that I choose this topic was that there are lots of terms that we use for asylum legislation that we know, but we use not in the right way, and we don't know the legal definitions of those terms. That's why I would like to point out and while I'm presenting this topic. And then while I'm preparing this presentation, I I, I, I get help from the legal definitions and explanations as well. That's why I'm hoping that this presentation will be really informing for those who does not have a clear understanding on this topic. So while I'm doing my research, I basically use the source of um, we call it mevzuat and the laws, and then that's why it can be a little bit boring, but I will try my best to make it um, effective and not boring as much as I can. So let's go to the presentation outline. This is the presentation outline that I will be going through. I will be defining what is migrant, what is immigrant, and what are the differentiation between them. And I will be trying to define from the starting point as who can be, how can be, and rights of a refugee, conditional refugee, subsidiary protection, and temporary protection, and asylum seeker. And I know that we are coming across these terms starting from the Syrian civil war crisis, but these terms is not like more upcoming trendy terms that has occurred in the last 10 years, but it has been used for many different conditions. But in Turkey, the definitions and the rights of these terms has been changed or maybe redefined. So that's why I wanted. As also, I have to point out that these terms has a different meaning from a sociological perspective than we compare to legal perspective. So the reason that I use more legal perspective, that I wanted to make it clear and certain as much as possible. So I will be using legal terms, legal definitions for those terms. And so if we point out those terms, for example, the condition refugee or when we say migrant, I didn't, yeah, okay. When we search migrant in the dictionary, then we came across with the understanding of göçmen. And then when we search for refugee or asylum seeker, they have a similar meaning, but in the legal term, they are quite different. They quite differ from each other. So let's go. So let's try to define a migrant and migrant at the same time, because they, even though they differ from each other, they have quite similar or same definitions when it comes to legal terms. So it means that a person who moves away from his or her place of usual residence, whether within a country or across an international border, or for a variety of reasons. So the reason that I pointed out in here, as it has been pointed out, as within a country or across international border, because for the migrant, it doesn't have to, or for the immigrant, the person does not have to change or his or her location, for example, different from a Turkey to another country. So it can be happened within the country as well. That's why we mainly use for internal displaced person but it has a different understanding from the migrant and immigrant terms. So I will just skip that one. So the differentiation between migrant and immigrant, they are not like clear legal definitions, but the terms are basically used for migrant terms used for temporary movements, but immigrant terms used for permanent residency, and who has a permanent residency, I might call. And the, the, I have to point out another thing is that term of migrant basically has a meaning, has an understanding of who is coming from Turkish. Let me point out, maybe I should. Yeah. The migrant term in Turkey has been defined as a person who from a Turkish ancestry or culture and a culture. So basically, we can say that a person who does not have a Turkish ancestry or culture cannot seem as a migrant in Turkey. So, for example, for the Kurdish people or for the Arab people, they are not migrant in our country, we might call it. And also another point that I would like to show that even though religion, even though it doesn't seem as it doesn't show the legal importance in the law, the religion has a really great impact on being immigrant itself. So also as I say that coming from a Turkish ancestral culture has a really discriminative definition when it comes to immigrants. So it's quite discriminative. So let's go to the process. So applying for international protection, what does it include? So in Turkish law, if you're an, let me go through, if a person, according to Turkish law, if a person is unable to return its home country, his or her home country due to fear of being persecuted on account of the person's race, religion, political opinion, nationality, and membership of particular group, or indiscriminate violence arising towards this situation, or being subject to death penalty and or torture or inhuman treatment or punishment. It means that you have the right to stay in Turkey on basis of international protection status, which has been granted by the government of Turkey. This is the right to seek for international protection status. So let's go over to who can be part or who can be a refugee. So the refugee term basically used for a person who's a member of was coming from a member state of European Council and can apply for international protection as a refugee. So this statement has been protected by the Article 61 on the law, for the law of foreign international protection. And so let's go. So conditional refugee. It has been differentiated from the refugee status of refugee from a perspective of where the person is coming from. So if a person who is coming from outside of European countries, it means that the person should apply for conditional refugee. So also another differentiate from the refugee status, that conditional refugee is just only allowed to stay in Turkey temporarily, that until the time that they will resettled in the third country. And this status has been protected by the convention. It has been Immigration Convention when it applied in 1951, which under the name of geographical restriction, Article 1 of Convention. And another status for the international protection, which is subsidiary protection. So the basis of this status, which means that if a person who cannot apply for refugee status or who cannot apply for conditional refugee status, they should be applying for subsidiary protection, which means ikinci koruma. So this statute has been protected by Article 61 in the law of foreign international protection. And if a person as foreign or stateless person who cannot be qualified as refugee or conditional refugee, as I said before, so it should be applying for subsidiary protection, but there are some conditions. For example, a person, if it's sentenced to death or face an execution of a death penalty, as well as we define in the refugee status as well, or under the name of international protection, or face the torture or inhuman treatment, or face of treat himself or indiscriminate violence, or according to his thoughts and beliefs. Besides, let's go over this one. So we have been coming up with the temporary protection, which is basically the status that we came up with in Turkey for the Syrian civil war crisis. So actually, there wasn't any term called temporary protection in the Turkish law until the time for 2013. It has been applied for it, and then the decision has been made in 2014. But until that time, we didn't have a code. We didn't have this status because this is not under the name of international protection law and status. It has a different understanding and different aspects. So which basically Turkey has Turkey has been come up with the idea of this term under the name of Syrian refugee crisis in Turkey. So this has been established in 2014, and this is as I said, let me repeat myself, this is not a refugee status, or this not has the right of a refugee. It goes in the name of temporary protected or under temporary protection, which is completely a different aspect in the international protection law. And who is asylum? Who is asylum seeker? By the way, why we did come up with the idea of temporary protection? Let me repeat myself again. So according to the Turkish government, they argued that they were seeking for a rapid resolution for the crisis that it happening in Turkey. So they, in the beginning, actually, I have to say, in the beginning, they didn't think that they will the Syrian refugees, I might call it in a sociological perspective. They thought that Syrian refugees were staying in our country for long term, but that's why they didn't come up with the permanent or long-term solutions. That's why we had to face, and they have to face, lots of problems in our country, and that's why they have been discriminated from the side of Turkish citizens, because from Turkish citizens they were thinking that the Syrians are using our sources and they have the rights like ours, but in the reality they didn't. they were suffering, they were trying to survive in the terms of when we come to say that refugee quote. So who is asylum seeker? So asylum seeker is not like a legal status, I might call it, because a person, it basically says that someone is seeking international protection, but who didn't climb the refugee status or another refugee status yet, and it doesn't determine it yet. So if a person who apply for refugee status, who it stayed in the asylum seeker status, I might call it, but yeah. So how can we? That's another point. So to be able to be a refugee, so the state was going to do request for asylum and to do PDMM, and then register for application under the name of international protection. And then you will be allowed to stay in Turkey until the DGMM, which is basically the local international version of PDMM, makes the decisions about you, and then you will be until that time you will benefit from some basic rights and services such as healthcare and education. I will be trying to point out later on. And yeah, so another one is for temporary protection. So by the way, let me count that. For the refugee status, as I said, there are 3 different stages. You can be refugee, you can be conditional refugee, or you can be subsidiary protection under the subsidiary protection. But you, as probably you can guess that not everyone can understand these status. So this is the procedure. It goes. You apply for that you are seeking for international protection, and then they register you, and they divide your status. They will the label on your application under the name of international protection according to your country and your reasons to come to Turkey. And the one of the most important point is temporary protection, which, by the way, the person who is coming from Syria, they do not have the right for applying for international protection application in Turkey. That's why they have to apply for temporary protection. So they approach the DGMM, which is Director General for Immigration Management, and then they register for temporary protection identification card, and they enjoy the right. I may say enjoy. I would like to make it a little sarcastic in here. That's why I said enjoy the rights and services as beneficiary of the temporary protection policies, because this is the way they write on the procedure website. And rights of let me go through. So for the refugee, for the refugee, basically they have lots of rights when we compare to other ones. So refugee have the freedom of religion, freedom of freedom of marriage, freedom of getting a place, I might call, and they have working right, they have open a business right, they have get a how to say, accumulate a place, and they have social security, they have education, they have social insurance and working rights, and they have the right to be a side in the courts. They have to be able to join a I couldn't explain in English, and so on. So, but compared to all rights, they don't have a right to transition to long-term resident permits. So another really interesting point. So for the conditional refugee, So for the conditional refugee, they can get they can apply for a working permit after 6 months. So it means that until 6 months they cannot work. They cannot work legally. So that's another interesting point that I would like to point out, because it means that Turkish government doesn't care about how do you survive when you can apply for the working permit. But like still, you are gonna apply for a working permit after you get the conditional refugee status, and you have to wait until you get the permission, working permit. So it's gonna like go like, I don't know, for ages, at least a year, maybe more, I might say. Again, conditional refugee doesn't have the right to transition to long-term resident permit. So let's go subsidiary protection. So for differentiation from the conditional refugee, they get the right to work at the same time they get status. So it's quite interesting when we look at the conditional refugee status. So also they have, from the differentiation from the conditional refugee, as that they have family reunification rights in Turkey. Again, so they don't have the right to transition to long-term resident permits. So another point is temporary protection. They do not have the similar rights when we look at the other status, like subsidiary protection, like a family reunion and so on. And they have limited access to health service and work, education. They have the access to education service, but limited with the primary and secondary school. And then they also health service, they cannot go to private ones. And they have the right to social assistance, translations, judicial assistance and complaint. But the weird point was, and really interesting part, is that they require paperwork. So they were seeking for papers that it proved that they were, like, I don't know, they were working in Syria, they were citizens of Syria. But I get the point that people want to clarify, what do you do in Syria, what were you doing in Syria? But at the same time, it means that if you don't have paper, you don't have right to seek for protection. So it's quite interesting. Again, they don't have the right to transition to long-term resident permit as well. Another point was asylum seeker. So as I said, it's not like a highly protected legal status. So it has some health and social security benefits that the time that until you get your status, as we know that this is a status between that you apply for it, or you would apply for the protection, but you didn't get the status yet. So I would like to show you in a website, but it won't be opening in the screen. So I put it here. So it's really quite informing website that has 4 different languages: English, Turkish, Arabic, and I think it's Farsi, maybe in German, I'm not sure. But it has the 3 different perspectives: from a law perspective, from the person who will apply for it, and from the legal perspective, I guess. But it has informations for the refugees' rights. And for example, you can click and you can select the Arabic language, and you can, there's 2 options appearing that it says from the Syria or outside of Syria. So if you are a person who are coming from Syria, you will click on that one, and then you will get information about your rights and your procedure as well. So it's really informing. And I found the interesting interview that has been filmed or has been videoed. Like there's a lawyer, a female lawyer. She was explaining the procedure about asylum seeker and refugee status that is coming to Turkey, and what are they doing, what are the perspective on it. So I just wanted to put this I would like to make it neutral as possible, but I would want to put this words in here. So law is order, and good law, the good order basically says the thing that we need. It says what Aristotle, sorry. And this is my references. Actually, they were quite long, but I only could put on these because I couldn't how to understand to make it as a version of the references. So I point out 3 or 5, 4 of them in here. And thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your time. And if you have any further questions, you can always contact me. Feel free to contact me. I will try to answer all your questions. And yeah, have a lovely